Welcome to the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we, a business owner and an artist, discuss the business of art and the art of business. Hey friends, I'm Carl, founder of Epic Made.
And I'm Ross, creative director at Epic Made, and we're the hosts of the Pixel Retentive Podcast, where we share our thoughts on creativity, art, and business. Past guests include Chad Franzen with Rise 25 and Marcy Selsberg of Blah Blah Blah.
All right, and we are forever grateful for the sponsors of this podcast, and we are always looking for additional sponsors. But as always, this episode is brought to you by the creative gurus at Epic Made. Epic Made is a collaborative of expert artists and animators who help brands tell powerful and engaging stories. We've demonstrated our expertise in visual storytelling, fantasy pop culture, and detailed world building in collaboration with some of the biggest brands on planet Earth, including Sci-Fi, Nickelodeon, and TNT. Visit getepicmade.com and let's collaborate on your next creative campaign.
And with us today, we have Rebecca Blake. Rebecca works, sleeps, eats, and lives as the design director of Optimum Design and Consulting, a small design firm in Midtown Manhattan. There, she oversees the creation of a wide range of print and web projects, including marketing materials, logos, corporate ID, website interfaces, and publications. For the last 30 years, she has also been an active member of the Graphic Artists Guild. She's been on the board and is also currently the advocacy liaison on its national board. Welcome, Rebecca. Glad to have you.
I'm glad to be here.
All right. So before we jump in, Rebecca and I know each other well because we are both on the board. I've only been there for, a couple months, 6 months, 8 months, something like that. Rebecca's been there for 30 years, which is amazing. But just so our audience can get to know you a little bit better, Rebecca, a couple quick questions. So how long have you been doing this and what brought you to your industry? So this being design and in this space.
Oh, gosh. I had a kind of circuitous route, which I think is pretty typical for designers. We tend to come from all over. I actually studied biology and German literature in college with every intention of going to medical school and got a kick-ass lab research job with a guy who just won a Nobel Prize in New York City and realized, that I was close to my dream of getting into medical school, and I wasn't very happy. So I took an art class to cheer myself up at Brooklyn Museum of Art. Go Brooklyn Museum of Art. Fell in love with art. Decided I didn't want to starve as a fine artist, so I started going to continuing ed at SVA, School of Visual Arts, which is a kick-ass program. Fell really in love with design and basically funded my design school education by working days in medical research and going to school at nights, and then became a designer at the ripe old age of 30.
Wow. So you're working hard. I'm going to pivot from med school, pick up another thing, and just,
A lot of designers do that, though. We come from all over.
We're smart.
Yeah.
They're very intelligent human beings that are very capable of things. It is a superpower, I feel like.
Yeah.
You're
curious. That's how we end up being designers.
For sure. And you said something there I thought was really powerful, that, you weren't happy and you found it in art. And I this is a profound thing that motivates me as a human being and as a creator and as a content creator, is that like letting people know that like there's so much like anti-depression and just pure happiness to be made, to be that's inside of you just from making something, right? Making things, making art. That experience is powerful.
Yeah. I just spoke at Stanford University with Steven Zapata, who's this really well-known illustrator. And we're speaking on AI, and he, in introducing himself, just basically said everything that matters to him he learned doing art. And he talked about, I learned compassion, I learned this, I learned that. And he talked about how the act of creating is this well he keeps going back to renew himself. And I thought that was so beautifully worded. I think there's something about creating. It's just innate to being a human.
Yeah, there is. It's in our culture and our DNA, if you will. Yes. All right, so 2 more quick questions, and then we'll kind of roll into the subject matter. So I'm going to do them in reverse order because I think the other one will lead us right in. So let's say, tell us about a project that you're most proud of in your career.
Oh, it's what I'm working on right now. So we've got a lot of clients in high performance computing, which is kind of interesting that now I'm doing on this Odyssey on AI because I've been hearing about AI and machine learning for years now.
Sure.
But it's a publisher, and they have 4 different divisions, 4 different publications under one umbrella. And so we've done the logo designs, we've done the website interfaces, set up the branding, and we're now applying the design to all these, well, quote unquote print materials. I mean, usually it's transmitted via PDFs, they're white papers.
Yep.
They have lots of relationships with sponsors, so everything needs to be co-branded. And it's just been this lovely project. It's one of those dream projects where there are so many moving pieces and everything needs to fit together as this one big whole, but every single little division needs to also stand on its own and have its own uniqueness to it.
Sure.
And I'm really proud of it because it came together in better than I had hoped. Well, designers, we always were very critical of ourselves. So that's one I'm really proud of, and it's a super client, super nice client. Really happy to work with them.
Designers are critical of themselves. Carl, I have no idea what she's talking about there.
My older sister's a designer and illustrator. She describes it as postpartum depression. You always put a postpartum depression after you complete a project, like, oh, why didn't I do this?
Yeah, I feel like every art form has that to a degree, but I having known Carl for as long as I have and seeing him be so pixel retentive, ironically, about design, just like moving like single letters a couple of pixels after the fact.
Yeah.
Definitely, I definitely understand that.
We really do get in deep arguments about the space between the letter A and the letter W.
Yeah. And like L and P or
the overhanging of a T to begin a sentence and where you should align that, and
Yep. And how close do you put a footnote to the little superscript?
Yeah, it's got to feel right, whatever that means. I heard someone describe being a designer one time as taking a bunch of things and moving them around until it looks right. And you can do that in any medium. You can do it in a living room or on a piece of paper or
It's like having the sensitivity of an artist with the persnicketiness of an accountant.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like that.
Yes, I love that. In fact, that's how I'm going to explain graphic design from now on.
Yeah.
Honestly.
Yeah. It's where art meets accounting. Persnickety. Yeah. Pixel retentive. It's perfect. I love it.
So yeah, the what Carl's going to get into it kind of the lead into today's topic. We can probably predict your answer. What is top of mind in the industry right now?
Oh, generative AI.
Yep.
The artificial intelligence used to generate. I don't want to use the word create. Used to generate original works, and we're talking about images, but we're talking about text, music, software, believe it or not.
Yep.
Voiceovers, believe it or not.
Anything.
Apparently websites. Click a few buttons and a website will pop out.
Yep, absolutely. And so on this episode, we are talking about artificial intelligence, Skynet, and mostly its impact on the art industry and the business industry, as well as copyright concerns, and sort of the conversation that we should be talking about rather than the minutia of the creation itself.
Yeah, whether or not you hate it is,
yeah, right.
It's kind of like, well, I hate that my dad died, but like that happened. You can't undo that. And so what's the moving forward, right? Like,
yeah.
How do you navigate the new life, right?
So elephant in the room addressed. AI is here. It's something that we have to live with now. It's not going back in the box. So
yeah,
it's framing the conversation in a positive light.
So I'm representing the Graphic Artists Guild largely in this conversation, and the Graphic Artists Guild, represents designers and illustrators of all stripes, and we have some who hate AI, some who love AI. Most of the members I've talked to are either fiddling with it or thinking about fiddling with it, but they're not using it to generate works for clients yet because of the concerns with the ethics and the copyright concerns. But the Guild's position is we're pretty agnostic on the technology. I mean, technology is technology. And the issue we've always had, way predating AI, is technology being implemented in a way that protects artists? And we can argue very eloquently, and you give me another hour and I'll do it, about how the DMCA, for example, the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, did not do that. But our approach with artificial intelligence image generators is they're not going to disappear. As much as folks who hate them wish, this technology is not going to vanish. So the Guild is trying to look for really practical ways of accentuating the good that artists can gain from it and mitigating the harm that's going to happen from job loss, from copyright grabs, et cetera, et cetera. So, and I think it's a really balanced, realistic approach to it. I'm tired of hyperbole and rhetoric and people, falling on their swords.
Absolutely. Yeah. And so I guess it might make sense to go really quick and just kind of discuss our personal stances on it, kind of just frame the conversation of where everyone is sitting right now.
Yeah.
As an illustrator and as someone who is both curating art on the creative director side for Epic Made and someone who is a digital illustrator personally and professionally, I use Midjourney, but I have never, very much like you mentioned, Rebecca, I've never used it for a client. And Epic Made has the same sort of stance. We have dabbled in it from a ideation or sort of inspiration standpoint, but not ever used pixels from generative AI in a project in any form. And I have just recently dabbled into doing that in my own work in like a small collage sort of fashion. Like I need a castle in the distance here. It's not the main focus of the design or the illustration. I'll have Midjourney handle that and I'll paint over it and sort of use it as the skeleton. I do think that there's an enormous amount of ethical concerns and regulation that needs to be imparted on AI before it's usable in a commercial space personally, but I do think that it's possible for it to be a very positive outcome for the art community if everyone sort of comes together on it.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. I have a feeling there's so much attention being brought to it now. There's proposed regulations in the EU. We know Congress isn't going to do anything in a year before an election. So Congress is probably not going to proceed with legislation, but they've been running hearing after hearing after hearing on this. And a lot of the concerns that artists have been having about, how is the data set sourced and what are the copyright issues are actually being echoed in those hearings from all sectors. And I'm actually hearing it also, I'm hearing it from AI artists. I'm hearing it from people working the technology platform. I'm hearing it from people. I've spoken at 2 meetings that were run by people who were marketing experts, and they wanted me on as sort of the generative AI image geek. And I was startled at how these very practical professionals working in marketing, giving advice to small businesses were saying, look, use it for ideation. Do not use it to generate final images for now, because there are so many questions being raised. And so it seems like people are sort of figuring out where we are right now. Now, that's not to say that we're going to stay here. I mean, we can assume that these questions are going to be resolved in some way.
Yeah. I mean, so personally for me, like I have always loved, I was a designer first, only because I didn't have an avenue in the school I got into to like really, there wasn't like here's a digital painting class or digital art degree, or like, it was just fine arts and then, graphic design and kind of, so all of that, I always like just loved to make stuff. So that said, like my thing that I always really, really loved was photo bashing it and collaging together and then drawing on top of that. So now that I've got AI. I've been using it a lot on my personal works. I'd say a lot. I'd say like every other week I do a piece. So every other piece of mine I do some AI, but I always incorporated photos of that I took or bought. But usually try to do them ones that I take. But my weekly live stream, if anybody's ever chimed in on that or dropped in on that, I try to do a really fast, exciting ideation of a piece of art, just kind of channeling my father, who had this speed of creation when he made his pieces. But I finally got to play with Photoshop's thing last week, where they added in like generative AI into Photoshop. It's the lines are getting blurred really quick, right?
Yeah.
So it's really like, I didn't use any other generative AI except for this corner where I put in a cool little dragon, and I used 4 pieces of their stuff that they generate. I didn't like any of them, but I liked parts of all of them, which is what I do, right? So I just cut them all apart and batched them all together and painted on top. Now this really cool, very unique dragon, but I never would have made a dragon that looked like this without the inspirational pieces from this. So it came together pretty cool. So I'm really on the fence on like, where does should that not be copyrightable? Like, I don't know. Like, should I not be able to sell that to somebody else as something I made? Like, it should be, right? But maybe not the original pieces. Those can be open source or whatever. I don't know. But yeah, I know we'll jump into the 3 C's in a little bit, but I think there's a lot.
But I think what you're touching on, and maybe this is a good time to address it. Number one, what you're describing your work, not on an AI platform, is you're creating derivative works.
Yeah.
Because what you're doing is you're using some copyrighted elements, probably some public domain elements, probably your own generated works, and you're creating works. And so when you start using copyrighted works in creation of your own work, you're delving into this thing called fair use. And fair use is this really, really cool concept. A lot of people say, oh, copyright is evil because it doesn't permit sampling and stuff. And that's actually not true. The fair use doctrine actually opens up that gateway. And fair use is the idea that it is fair to use a copyrighted work if it meets certain conditions. And the reason why fair use exists is it's trying to create a balance between protecting the individual rights of the copyright holder, your right to control your work, your right to earn money from it, your exclusive right to earn money from it, against the public good. So you've got these two opposing good things, which is your rights and the public. Right. So when can we use it? And so many, many, many illustrators actually do create derivative works. They'll use photos as reference material, or they'll be collage artists, or they'll be photo montage artists, where you are. And so what
or even paint over illustrators.
Right. What painting over a photograph is not going to generate an original enough work. That's a copyright infringement.
Is it?
Oh yes. And a lot of illustrators need to be really fair use is a tricky thing to understand, but it's really critical for illustrators to use. When you analyze something to see if it's a fair use in a copyright infringement case, you consider 4 factors. But fair use, for example, says, it's fair to use something for educational purposes. So like if you're a teacher in school, you can hand out photocopies of a poem to your students because it's educational. Or it's fair use to show something if you're commenting on it. You can't do a critique of an artist's works without, showing a work. So that's commentary. So parody, funnily enough, is a fair use, because a parody, you're making fun of something, you're commenting on it. So when it comes to artists who generate original works based on existing works, it has to pass this bar to become a fair use. And a bunch of the things I consider, one of the really crucial things to consider is, are you harming the market for the original creator? I mean, you can't deprive them of an income. And there recently was this really big Supreme Court case called Warhol v. Goldsmith about, Warhol used a photograph by photographer Goldsmith. The first time he used it was under license, and then he pulled additional screen prints, and one of those was printed in Vanity Fair. So she sent them an infringement, a letter saying you infringed my copyrights because you did not have a license to use that photo for any other purposes. And they then promptly sued her in court to say, get a declaratory judgment saying, no, we got to use your photograph because it was fair use, because Andy Warhol took your photograph and did this posterized silk screen of it. And that is fair use. And that worked its way all the way up to the Supreme Court that ruled against the Warhol Foundation. And the Graphic Artists Guild, actually, we submitted an amicus brief, a friend of the court brief, in support of the photographer. And that brief was really cool because it analyzed what is fair use. So why is Warhol using Marilyn Monroe and creating posterized images of fair use in our assessment, but not the Prince photo? And it had to do with when he used the Marilyn Monroe photo, it was a super famous photo. So when he posterized it and flattened it, he was making this commentary on celebrity. But the Prince photo was relatively unknown. Nobody knew who Lynn Goldsmith was, and except for other photographers. She's very well regarded in photography. But that photo was not iconic. So Warhol taking it and applying his tried and true posterized technique to it didn't pass the transformative test.
Interesting. So the logic behind that was that because Warhol transformed an already, I guess, popular thing, it was more acceptable than if he was taking food out of an individual artist's mouth. It wasn't.
There's this concept that came out in earlier court cases. It's actually not in the statute, but there's this concept that came out that said the transformative use has to imbue the derivative work with new expression and meaning. So here's this publicity still of Marilyn Monroe that the studios blanketed the publications with, widely printed, because it was tied to one of her big famous movie releases. I forget which movie, but everybody knew that photograph. It was everywhere. So when he took it and he posterized it and he, sort of put that sort of garish colors on it, he basically was doing this really cool commentary on how the public gaze flattened Marilyn Monroe, how she became this simplistic, almost hyper-sexualized image because of the eyeshadow and stuff like that those garish colors he put on it. That was a commentary on what the public gaze did to her, how it flattened her. So he took that photograph and all of a sudden he did this work that kind of took your breath away, like, oh my God, look at this. Look at what we've done to her in a way.
Well, who put that meaning on it? Did he say that? Did Warhol put that out as part of the?
I don't know what he actually said about the image. I do know that was widely discussed when that painting became famous.
So
that was, and this is the reason why the museums were so attracted to these images, because his entire pop art commentary was a commentary on popular culture and on what popular culture does to iconic humans, iconic brands. Yeah. So yes, I mean, it was very much part of his overall messaging, his overall intent. What the thing he was shining a light on, that fit within it.
Okay.
But then to do the same tried and true technique to a relatively unknown photograph, and that photo was then printed in a publication. Well, Lynn Goldsmith licensed her photos for magazines. So not only did he use it without permission, but he actually used it, the Warhol Foundation used it in a way where Lynn Goldsmith herself could have derived an income by having that image placed in a magazine. So the Supreme Court analyzed it pretty clearly. And our amicus brief said really clearly, this is why these different works we think meet that bar for fair use. Fair use is a gray area. There is no bright, shiny line like, I'm hopping across it, now it's fair use, and I'm hopping back this way and it's not fair use. It's not. It's almost like art itself. You know it when you see it. But every single illustrator on earth needs to consider really carefully when they use existing copyrighted works, like, how far am I taking this? What am I doing to the market for the original creator? Am I truly imbuing this with new expression meaning? Am I truly creating something that is original, that does not displace the original work itself?
Yeah. So was that you had mentioned there's 4 factors. I assume was that what you just mentioned there?
The 4 factors are the character of the work, the nature of the work, the portion and substantiability, and basically the market effect of the work.
Got it.
And transformative comes under the first thing, which is the character of the work.
Okay.
Each of the work has to do with, is it for profit or nonprofit? By the way, if you do something for a nonprofit, that doesn't magically make it fair use. Lots of churches have tried to use Disney characters in their little, children's daycare centers and been sued. Portion substantiality, a lot of illustrators make the mistake and say, well, I'm only using 10% of the work, so I'm okay. No. If you use a tiny portion of a work, but it is the heart of the work, then that counts against you. That is not a fair use. And then the last is, the market.
Interesting. And so how does that apply to artificial intelligence? Right. Because basically my understanding, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but we've been doing a lot of research into this since its inception, or at least the public inception of it.
Yeah.
And my understanding is that AI is created on a data set every AI is created on a data set that's more or less a collection of blended content from the internet. And there was some sort of clause that justified using copyrighted material in this blend.
So that's what the tech sector would love you to believe, that there is this sort of magical, mythical clause that says, look, fair use. We have to right line. So I want to correct something. I think you understand this, but I want to correct this for anybody listening in. You had said blended content. I think we need to be really clear. Generative AI systems do not take images and blend them in the output.
Right.
And everything that, but because you use the word blended, I wanted to make sure people understood. AI tools do not collage images together. They do not retain the images in the data set. And we have to be really clear on that, because that actually has implications in copyright cases on this. So by blended, I think what you meant is that they gathered billions of images into a massive data set.
Correct. Yeah. And that data set is used to then inform the outputs of AI. So that typically means that AI's original work, isn't it?
Sorry?
That typically means that what AI is outputting is original work, is it not? If it's not using collaged pieces of...
Well, that's the argument they would like to make. Now, some arts advocates are making the argument that because you can have close fitting that occurs, if AI systems are overtrained on an image, that image can appear in pretty close fidelity. Mm-hmm. Some AI advocates are making the argument that close fitting, in a sense, constitutes copyright infringement. I think it's a really interesting case. Because no, they don't retain the image itself. They're not collaging together, but the technology does permit them to recreate something. So is that an infringement? For me, it's an open question. But what the Guild and a lot of the creators organizations are thinking about is the original data set. And when I say creators organizations, we've actually done lobbying with writers organizations, musicians organizations, fine artists. ARS fell on the opposite side of us on the Warhol case, but joined us in lobbying on the AI, generative AI case. By the way, the lesson I've learned in advocacy is you never make a solid enemy of anybody, because invariably your interests are going to align.
You're going to be on their side at some point.
Everybody's a potential ally. Don't close the door on anyone. But the original data set, the one that was used for the Lion database, which was, I think the one that everybody's talking about, that had 5 billion images in it. Mm-hmm. And it included images under copyright. It included images that were part of medical records. It included images that were sucked out of piracy websites. So if you're a creator, your stuff was stolen and stuck on a piracy website, and then insult on injury, then that was used to the data set, And so our contention is that putting those images in data sets without consent, without compensation, without credit, constitutes a copyright infringement. What the AI image generator platforms are saying is, no, it's fair use. And it's fair use because the act of using those images for the machine learning is transformative.
Understood.
Right.
Now,
So the question isn't whether or not our AI is outputting original imagery. It's whether or not the data set being used to generate those images
was a violation.
was a violation in compiling it.
now there's a class action lawsuit that actually is tackling this on both fronts, the outputs and the inputs. What we're focusing on, because the output question, court cases are really, really hard to get settled in favor of creators when it comes to fair use. So the what seems to us to be the very, very, very clear infringement is the generation of that original data set. And we don't buy the argument on transformative.
Right.
In previous court cases, when people were talking about transformative, they were actually talking about the output. They were talking about the derivative work.
Right.
That used new expression and meaning.
Yeah, you could argue that that, like you said, a close fitted AI output, you could maybe argue whether or not it's transformative of what it was closely fitted to. But
I don't even want to go there.
Right. Yeah, we don't. That's missing the root of the problem, which is how it got into the data set in the first place.
What I want to focus on is, first of all, the AI image generator platforms don't want to talk about the outputs. They're talking about just the input for the machine learning is a transformative use.
Right.
And again, from an artist's perspective, does it make sense? Because for us, that transformative use has always applied to outputs, not to inputs. So the second thing that the AI generator platforms will say is they came up with this idea of non-expressive copying. In other words, we didn't copy the expressive elements of a creative work. We copied the non-expressive elements. In other words, boiled down what makes a drawing to the simple facts of what is a line, what is a shadow, what is a this, what is a that, the hardcore data facts of it. That is a non-expressive element, and that's what we were copying to teach the machines on.
Well, if that's true, then close fitting wouldn't even exist.
Well, there's actually an even bigger question, which is one that I have raised, and I'm interested in hearing what copyright lawyers will think of this. I'm not a copyright lawyer. I'm a designer.
Right, yeah. None of us are lawyers. We're just talking about this.
My response to someone who sort of raised that specter was, non-expressive copying does not make sense to an artist when you have ingested into your system something that is entirely an expressive work. So you may say that the machine learning is non-expressive, but I know an illustrator. You put your pen on paper, you put your pixels on screen to make a line. That line is expressive.
Right.
The first line you put down in an illustration is an expression already. Does it have a change in weight? Is it a thick line, a thin line? The shadowing you put is expressive. The light sources you choose are expressive. The shape is expressive. Everything is an expression.
To boil it
down,
how
how do you say this is non-expressive copying? It's nothing but expressive copying.
Yeah. To boil it down, there is no such thing as default art. There isn't a root form of what makes art as a clear definition. It's all a root of it's all an output of an expression of the artist.
Yeah.
So
I'm just getting to my power cable while we're talking.
Yeah, no worries.
You're all right. So I did want to jump in here and mention that, I know Ross said like all AI generative art is based on this data set. That data set is actually the majority of the major platforms like Midjourney and DALL-E use this data set that people have this major ethical concern with. Yeah. Now, when you remove that, and what Adobe has said, and I haven't dove into the details of it, but their Firefly and their generative art stuff is all on an ethical data set, which is all from people who they've compensated through they use basically Adobe stock and public domain images. Now, I don't know if anyone's got into the weeds of their data set or if they've even shared that with anybody to substantiate their claim. But that said, now we're in a whole different spectrum where, okay, let's just say there's no issues at all there. Like now we're moving forward into this space on like, can and you own these things you generate. Right? Like, yeah, it's really interesting, right? So once you take that part of the argument off, then it's like, all right, now we're over here. We're past that, potentially, theoretically. So I don't know.
No, you've raised a second question. Well, first of all, yes, people want data sets ethically sourced. People also want to be compensated for the use of their images in the original data sets.
Of course.
And I to me, I think that's fair. Yeah, because they've used those images in the creation of a technology platform which directly competes with artists. So remember, we talk about those 4 use factors. We've got the fact of, the market harm. So we've got that as well.
Not only that,
copyright lawyer on earth is throwing their hands up at this point. I'm sure I've got something wrong in there, but
not only that, but you have the ability to directly infringe on the styling of an individual artist.
Yes, and that's another crucial issue, which is, unfortunately, style is not protected by copyright.
Nor should it be, in my opinion. It's a really, really, really dangerous avenue, because if you start protecting style, it more or less benefits the person with the most money at that point. Like, style can be so close between,
and then you could have all the styles copyrighted and nobody can do art anymore.
Right? Yeah.
Yeah, I actually want to speak to that, and then I want to get back to Carl's point about what does this do on ownership. Okay, so to speak about style, one of the things that I've actually had folks argue with me about is the fact that, yes, well, the machine learning is just like human learning, and humans copy other artists.
Inspiration.
Because the machine learning is just like the human learning, then isn't this fair? And my response is this. It is a tried and true educational technique to have burgeoning artists, learning artists to copy a style. And in fact, most illustrators I know go into illustration because they fall in love with some existing illustrator's work.
Right.
They love this style. They want to copy it. They want to do it. But where the machine differs from the human is every human creator I know has an ego, and they have originality, and they're individuals. And there is invariably that desire to make your own mark. So as a student, yes, you copy styles because you're still learning your craft. You invariably develop your own style. That is part of being a creator. That is the whole impetus. It is to express your vision.
Right.
The machine doesn't have that. But the second thing is where an illustrator may fail. Maybe an illustrator is just really comfortable copying a famous illustrator and doesn't really care. But that's where the professional community kicks in. That's where you have other illustrators saying, dude, cut that out. You're copying this person. That's where you then have the peer pressure. It's not considered a professional practice to imitate other illustrators and claim that style is your own. So where there might be a failure to develop, there certainly is, it is considered unprofessional and unethical. And professional illustrators respond to that. Machine doesn't care. Machine doesn't have core ethics built in.
Yeah.
So when they make a comparison between machine learning and human learning, there is no comparison, let alone the fact that when you learn as a human, I'm sorry, but if you've had a bad day, you've had a fight with your partner, your coffee didn't materialize, whatever, you're going to produce really different art than if everything is going your way. I mean,
I want a coffee materializer.
And so this difference in how the machine outputs also relates back to the copyrightability about it. See how, Carl, I'm threading my way back.
Yeah.
So the Copyright Office has weighed in on this, and this is where this has implications for illustrators working in AI.
I know about the Zarya of the Dawn comment.
Yeah. The Copyright Office has said very clearly, and they said this way before machine learning, AI, generative AI occurred. They said you have to be a human author of a work to have copyright in it. And there are a couple cases that came up. One was this series of texts that somebody tried to register, claiming that they were dictated by a celestial being. So the Copyright Office said, no, you can't. Celestial beings can't register their works because they're not human. So that guy never got his work registered. And then the other,
to the Bible.
no, yeah, it was some other, actually some people I knew I spoke to had heard of that case. I thought it was obscure, but apparently it's not. The other one was the monkey selfie case, which you guys must have heard of. Yeah, this photographer carefully set up his cameras so that monkeys took selfies, and then he claimed copyright to the images. And the copyright office said really clearly, no, monkeys can't register their copyrights. They've also said the same thing about elephants. Elephant paintings cannot be.
Oh, okay. Gotcha. So the lack of human authorship, doesn't that just blanket statement that images generated by AI aren't copyright?
Yeah. Except remember, we create derivative works. Remember? So if pre-AI, if you submitted like a photo montage and you had used maybe some public domain images of the Grand Canyon, and then you took some of your own photographs and you included those, and then you included some simple geometric shapes, which are not copyrightable, by the way, and you included those, and then you did all this manipulation. So when you submitted this to the Copyright Office, you would say it was a derivative work, and in your registration application, you would outline what were the public domain works, what were the works that are not copyrightable. So you'd say, I used this background photo of the Grand Canyon, and I used these geometric shapes. And then the Copyright Office would look at the sum of the whole work and then issue your copyright registration certificate if you've passed over that bar into originality. And they're pretty fair about that bar into originality. Okay. So that's a derivative work. So we can then translate that to the AI system. So if you're doing something in Midjourney, if all you're doing is simple text prompts and images are being spat out for you and you're curating them, that's generally not considered creative enough. There's not enough of your originality. The machine generated the works for you.
Right.
But maybe you input your own works. Maybe you curated your own data set that the system is utilizing. Maybe you did incredibly complex text prompts through several iterations. Maybe you took the resulting work offline and you montaged different pieces together, or you did additional manipulations. Maybe you then brought them back online and you then wrote some code to do some fine tuning. All of that original work you did is copyrightable. You basically have a derivative work. The stuff that was spat out by the AI system, that stuff is public domain. But you imbued all this originality to it. And what the Copyright Office would recognize is all the human originality that you brought.
So the output, obviously, again, we're not lawyers, but the output of AI, as we understand it, is not within copyright infringement. It's just fair use.
No, it's neither fair use nor infringement. It's public domain.
Public domain.
Whatever is generated by a machine is public domain. There is no human author.
Okay, all right. So you could theoretically use it in your work. It just can't be copyrighted. ?
It can't be copyrighted, but whatever you bring that is original can be. So if you're using an AI generated work as a background in a illustration with many layers, and you put your original work in those many layers, all of that stuff that you brought to it, that is the copyrightable portion of it. And you can register that with the Copyright Office as a derivative work.
Got it. Yeah, that's almost exactly what I was going to mention, which is great. So if you generate a cityscape in the background of art that you've drawn, and say even you go as far as painting over the cityscape that Midjourney has spit out.
Yeah.
It makes that image copyrightable, or is there like a percentage of it that you own? And a percentage
Remember, we don't go by percentages but yes, that should be copyrightable. But really, with registering works, sometimes it's an issue of register it and see what the Copyright Office comes back and says. Of course, yeah. But works just generated with text prompts, no. In general, no, those are not recognized. And by the way, we actually have some concerns for our AI artists. So, for example, you can have a creative director work with an illustrator and result in a work that is considered a joint work. Both the creative director and the illustrator own copyright to it. If the creative director is hugely involved with the creation of that work. So not only in providing direction, providing a lot of curation, providing a lot of creative input. In other words, this truly is a collaborative work. And creative directors and illustrators do all the time register works of joint authorship. So what that tells us is there is, in fact, creativity involved in, for example, the selection and the arrangement of elements. But it's all very much in a gray area. And I would really caution AI artists not to rely too much on the generosity of the Copyright Office interpreting that. It's not that the Copyright Office is out to get anyone. It's that this is a brand new technology. Our copyright registration system is based on copyright law that the bulk of it was written in 1975. So we're in a reactive period. There are a lot of concerns. For example, I completely believe that AI artists should be able to register as derivative works their creative works, which they invest so much into. I mean, I've seen some of our Graphic Artists Guild AI artists just produce the most amazing artwork. There's no way Midjourney could spit something out like this. Amazing artwork that is original, creative, and has that artistic integrity where the line quality has been thought up, the lighting source has been thought out. It's not this trite sort of. A lot of the generators, when they're used by non-artists, kind of produce imagery that has sort of a sameness to it, in terms of these really brilliant color palettes and this sort of fuzzy fantasy edge to it. No, these are artists who've just produced works of great originality, and you can recognize their works. So they're writing their own code for the fine tuning. Well, what happens when the generator platforms take that burden off the artist and in fact permit you to do fine tuning with button clicks? Right. Does this now mean that this is generated by the platform and this is no longer an original element they can claim copyright to?
Yeah, and that line's going to get blurred a lot. That's what I'm talking about with Photoshop. Like you get in paint anytime, anywhere. Like it's getting wild. It's really
it is getting wild, and so that's there. One of the things I'm realized with the Graphic Artists Guild advocacy work is there's no good answer to any of this.
Right. Well, and it's going to be an evolving conversation, like you and I.
It is. And we're going to be constantly playing catch up. And this is why I believe the Guild's tactic, the Guild's strategy is work on Congress to get what legislation, when they get around to it, what legislation passed that we can. For example, it should simply not be permissible to remove somebody's metadata. So metadata, you know what metadata is? Yeah. For folks listening who don't know, if you're a creator, you can embed information into your digital files in metadata fields that basically say you're the copyright owner and you created this, and you can put a lot of information in. So the Adobe Content Authenticity Initiative is developing metadata standards. So in theory, if you have a derivative work, part AI, part original, part whatever, you should be able to track all the different originations of the final work.
Totally.
Through metadata.
Yep.
But here's the problem. Social media platforms can legally, because of a loophole in copyright law, strip out metadata. Mm-hmm. This really key thing we can leverage to protect our works, they can legally strip out. We need to close that loophole. Oh, and by the way, a huge issue with data sets is the AI platforms has said, look, why don't we just have an opt-out? If we suck your image in and you don't want us to use it, you can opt out. All of the artists are saying, no, that doesn't work from us, because that means we're going to have to basically go into every single bloody platform and police it for our images. So what we would like to see implemented, and this has to do with the whole consent idea, is and wouldn't it be cool if there was a little thing you checked in metadata that says this image may be used for generative technology, and unless that field is checked, no platform can use it at all.
Yeah.
Let's take opt-out off the table because that's unfeasible. Nobody's
it places the burden on
Yes.
it places the burden on the side of the table that's already being cannibalized. Like it's already they're already dealing with predatory behavior.
Yes.
And then we're basically putting further burden on artists to then police their own work on every AI site that could pop up at any point.
The Digital Millennium Copyright Act gave us a really good example of how badly a system like that works. So I define the Digital Millennium Copyright Act is ISPs, internet service providers, and online service providers. All they had to do to not be sued for copyright infringement if they publish works that are under copyright is include this really simple process whereby if you're a copyright holder, you send them an email, you say, you've got my copyrighted work on your website, and this very simple process to resolve whether or not this work was, illegally uploaded, copyright infringed, and have it removed.
Awesome.
Kind of like a great idea. They put this law out there in 1999, I think it was, with the idea that the technology platforms would work with copyright holders. By the way, the vast majority of copyright holders, not Disney, not the motion pictures, the vast majority of copyright holders in the United States are illustrators, photographers, writers, musicians, software engineers, people who create. It's not corporations. Vast majority of copyright holders are individuals. Anyway, the idea was the tech platforms were then going to work with the copyright holders to implement robust measures to ensure the copyrighted works would never be uploaded. Guess what never happened?
Right.
Platforms never work with copyright holders. And the DMCA process is a joke at this point. Creators refer to it as internet whack-a-mole. Because
it's unfeasible. There's too many. There's too many.
You patrol these sites, you have your stuff taken down, and somebody else uploads it.
Yeah.
All right. Internet whack-a-mole.
That's true, man. Well, Rebecca, this has been really hugely informative. Clearly, we need to have like a second or third follow-up call on this. The rabbit hole is deep. But wow, we thank you so much for being on the show with us, Rebecca. We do have a last question before we wrap things up here. But before I ask that, what's a website or somewhere we can point people to check out more about your work or your company that you work with?
Oh gosh. Well, I'm working on updating our portfolio, but my company's website is optimumdc.com. D is a dog, C is in cat.com. And my passion project is the Graphic Artists Guild. That's graphicartistsguild.org.
All right.
Lots and lots and lots of really great resources there.
Okay, fantastic. All right. So our last question is, where can people go to learn more about AI and copyright? Like, where's the spot where you're getting the best information and just keeping yourself massively informed?
So the one place I've really been relying on is the Copyright Alliance. Copyright Alliance represents massive copyright holders like Adobe, like the Motion Picture Association. It also represents small trade associations like the Graphic Artists Guild, and it has hundreds of thousands, well, thousands and thousands, if not hundreds of thousands, of individual creator members. They have an AI portal. They are keeping a running tally on all these articles about AI. They've done analyses of the different legal arguments on fair use. They've got links to different, if you really turn into a copyright nerd, which I think it's kind of an interesting rabbit hole. They've got links to the Senate and House Judiciary hearings on AI. They're a really great, they are coming from the copyright holder's perspective. And the thing about the Alliance that I love is they really, really, really are aligned with the copyright interests of individual creators.
Amazing. Okay.
So I would say go to them because they're going to counter all these arguments about everything on earth should be fair use and artists are greedy if they try to assert their copyrights. Like, excuse me.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. So one last, and then just big shout out to the Graphic Artists Guild, which you brought up. That's where we met. We both serve on the board there. We're doing the work for all creators, trying to really make sure that this technology falls in a place and is utilized and regulated in a way that is best for artists and humanity. Trying to find the balance, right? So
right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, this has been Rebecca Blake of the Graphic Artists Guild. We definitely have to have a second episode or third episode. There's a lot more that I want to discuss with you about this, and I think it'll be a lot of fun.
Great. Super. Well, thanks, guys. It's been a lot of fun, and have me back anytime.
All right. And is there like a LinkedIn page or anything they can follow up with you at?
Oh, gosh. I am on LinkedIn, Rebecca Blake, Optimum Design and Consulting. I'm not very good at self-promotion.
That's okay.
You can always follow up with me there. Yes, I am on LinkedIn. And funny, I've actually been connecting with a lot of great people, so I need to start paying attention to it. I should be locked in a tower somewhere, not permitted to.
No worries. All right, Rebecca. Well, thanks so much for being on our show. And till next time, friends, we'll do this again.
Great. Looking forward to it. Bye, guys.
Bye.
We really hope you enjoyed the show. Please like and subscribe to join us on our next journey through the world of art and business on the Pixel Retentive Podcast.